On November 10th, 2022, a math teacher walked into a home improvement store with his two young sons. Security cameras captured him browsing the gardening section, his children trailing behind him as he selected a single item, a craftsman shovel. 3 days later, that same shovel would be found abandoned in the Antelope Valley Desert, next to a shallow grave. This is the story of Rachel Castillo, a 25-year-old mother of two, a straight-A graduate student, a woman who dedicated her life to helping survivors of domestic violence, and the estranged husband who spent 9 months planning her death. Simi Valley, California, a peaceful suburban community nestled in Ventura County, about 40 miles northwest of Los Angeles. Tree-lined streets, manicured lawns, the kind of place where neighbors know each other's names. In the Wood Ranch neighborhood along Country Club Drive, life moved at a predictable pace. Families, professionals, young couples building their futures. Rachel Marie Castillo seemed to embody everything this community represented. Born in 1997, Rachel was, by all accounts, extraordinary. Her family describes a young woman driven by purpose. She worked full-time as a healthcare navigator at Interface Children Family Services, connecting victims of domestic violence to resources and state healthcare programs. But that wasn't enough for Rachel. She was also pursuing her master's degree in clinical psychology at Pepperdine University, specializing in marriage and family therapy. Online classes, late nights studying, maintaining a perfect 4.0 grade average, all while raising 2 boys as a single mother. Her aunt, Renee Redding, would later tell the court that Rachel was more than just accomplished. She was devoted, a dedicated daughter, a loving sister, the kind of mother who put her children above everything else. But there was something else in Rachel's life, something that had been unraveling for months. Her marriage. On June 23, 2021, Rachel married Zarbab, who went by the nickname Bobby. He was also 25 years old, born on the same year as Rachel, January 4, 1997. Like Rachel, Bobby seemed to have his life together. He was a math teacher living in Hawthorne in Los Angeles County. They had 2 sons together, ages 2 and 5 by the fall of 2022. But by February 2022, less than a year after their wedding, the marriage had collapsed. Rachel filed for divorce. Court records show that Bobby had moved out, relocating to his parents' home in Victorville, a desert city in San Bernardino County, about 90 miles northeast of Los Angeles. They established shared custody of their sons. To the outside world, it appeared to be a standard separation, difficult but civil. What no one knew was that Bobby Ollie had already made a decision. According to his own later testimony, by February 2022, 9 months before Rachel's death, he had begun contemplating murder. 9 months. That's how long Bobby Ollie claimed he thought about killing his estranged wife. But in early November 2022, the fantasy became a checklist. November 7th, 2022, 3 days before Rachel's murder, Bobby walks into a Lowe's home improvement store in Simi Valley. His 2 young sons are with him, probably thinking this is just another weekend errand with Dad. Security cameras capture him selecting a single shovel from the gardening section, a Craftsman brand. He pays for it, walks out with his boys. A completely unremarkable transaction, except for what would happen 3 days later. But the shovel was just one piece of the puzzle. Forensic investigators would later extract Bobby's digital footprint from the days leading up to the murder. His search history painted a chilling picture. He researched firearms, how to remove DNA evidence, the penalties for first-degree murder in California. And then there was the GPS. Bobby had entered specific coordinates into his GPS device. Not an address. Coordinates. A remote location in the Antelope Valley Desert, near the tiny community of Littlerock in Los Angeles County. A place where almost no one goes. A place perfect for burying a body. November 10th, 2022. A Thursday. The day that had been marked in Bobby Ollie's mind for months. Rachel's sister, Emily, saw Rachel that morning around 9:30 a.m. Rachel was dropping off her sons for Bobby's scheduled custody visit. Everything seemed normal. Rachel was planning to work from home that day before going out that evening. Bobby picked up the boys, but instead of spending time with them, he drove them 90 miles east to his parents' home in Victorville. He left them there. Then he returned to Simi Valley alone. In the afternoon, Bobby conducted more internet searches. The digital forensics would later show his obsession intensifying as the clock ticked toward evening. Somewhere around 6 p.m. Pacific time, Bobby Ollie arrived at the apartment on Country Club Drive where Rachel was staying. The door was unlocked, a simple oversight from an earlier custody handoff that day. Bobby let himself in. He turned off the lights, and then he waited. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't an argument that escalated out of control. This was an ambush. According to his own later confession, Bobby positioned himself in the narrow hallway. He knew the layout. He knew Rachel's routine. When she emerged from the bathroom, he was there. He attacked her with a kitchen knife. 11 stab wounds, 7 of them fatal, targeting her chest and heart. The medical examiner would later determine that Rachel died within approximately 1 minute. The attack was swift, brutal. There were no defensive wounds on her body, suggesting she had no time to fight back. She was completely surprised. But Bobby Ollie wasn't finished. He wrapped Rachel's body in a blanket. He methodically cleaned the blood from the apartment, though he couldn't get it all. Then he loaded her body into the trunk of his car. By 8 p.m., he was driving northeast through the darkness, past the suburbs, past the city lights, into the Antelope Valley Desert, to the exact coordinates he had programmed into his GPS days earlier. In the remote desert near Littlerock, under the cover of night, Bobby Ollie used that Craftsman shovel he had purchased 3 days earlier to dig a shallow grave. He buried Rachel's body in the desert sand, left the shovel propped against a nearby tree, and then he drove back to Victorville, back to his parents' home, where his sons were sleeping. He arrived around midnight. But incredibly, horrifyingly, Bobby Ollie's night wasn't over. According to the confession he would later give to detectives, around 2 a.m., he got back in his car and drove all the way back to the burial site. He exhumed Rachel's body, and he committed necrophilia. When asked why during his police interview, Bobby said he wanted to commit to being a monster. Then he reburied her and returned home. 8:31 p.m., November 10th, 2022. Rachel's sister, Emily, returned to the apartment on Country Club Drive. What she found would trigger one of the most intensive investigations in Simi Valley Police Department history. Blood, drops, and spatter patterns in the living room, the hallway, the bedroom. Signs of a violent struggle. And Rachel was nowhere to be found. Emily immediately called 911. Simi Valley Police Officer Shola, he was among the first responders. The scene was secured. Detective Christopher Lamb of the SVPD Detective Bureau, a homicide specialist with over a decade of experience, took the lead. But there was no body, and at this point, no clear suspect. Rachel was entered into missing persons databases as at risk. Her family began a frantic search. They posted on social media. They drove through neighborhoods. They called everyone Rachel knew, including Bobby Ollie. When the family contacted Bobby to inform him that Rachel was missing, he expressed concern. He said all the right things. He offered to help search. Detective Lamb brought Bobby in for questioning on November 11th. Bobby denied any involvement. He was calm, cooperative. He answered questions. He said he had no idea where Rachel could be. But Detective Lamb wasn't convinced. Over the next 2 days, Bobby was interviewed 3 more times. Each interview became more pointed, more detailed. The detective was building a timeline, cross-referencing Bobby's statements with emerging evidence. Cell phone location data, license plate readers, witness statements. A neighbor reported seeing Bobby near the Country Club Drive apartment around 7 p.m. on November 10th. The digital net was tightening. Then came the breakthrough. On November 12th, during one of his interviews at the police station, Bobby asked detectives if he could call his family. He said he wanted to speak with them, that he didn't want them to have to lie for him. What Bobby didn't realize was that detectives were monitoring the call. And during that conversation, Bobby admitted to his family that he had killed Rachel. November 13th, 2022. Armed with Bobby's overheard confession, along with cell phone triangulation data and license plate reader footage tracking his vehicle's movements, A joint team from Simi Valley Police and the FBI began searching the Antelope Valley Desert near Littlerock. The coordinates from Bobby's GPS led them to a specific area of remote desert terrain. FBI Special Agent Virginia Cohn, a veteran of federal evidence response teams, was part of the search. In the afternoon, they found it. A shallow grave. A craftsman's shovel propped against a nearby tree. And Rachel Castillo's body, wrapped in a blanket. The Los Angeles County Medical Examiner was called to confirm identity and document the scene. That same afternoon, Detective Lamb and his team went to Victorville, to Bobby Ali's parents' home. They used a ruse, asking Bobby to come to the station to help with the investigation. He agreed. Once there, Detective Lamb conducted a fourth interview. This time, with the body recovered and overwhelming evidence in hand, Bobby Ali gave a full confession. He described the planning, the ambush, the stabbing, the burial, and the necrophilia, all of it. On November 15, 2022, the Ventura County District Attorney's Office filed formal charges against Zarbab Ali. First-degree murder under California Penal Code 187A. Felony sexual contact with human remains under Health and Safety Code 7052A. And special circumstances that could make him eligible for life in prison without possibility of parole. Murder by lying in wait, willful and premeditated murder, and personal use of a deadly weapon. Bobby Ali was 25 years old, the same age as Rachel. The wheels of justice turned slowly. For Rachel Castillo's family, the next 3 years would be an agonizing wait punctuated by court dates, continuances, and procedural delays. Her mother, Robin, would later speak publicly about the emotional toll of a system that seemed designed to prolong their suffering. April 8th and 9th, 2025, more than 2 years after Rachel's murder. A 2-day preliminary hearing was held in Ventura County Superior Court. Detective Christopher Lamb testified about the investigation, the interviews, the confession. Forensic experts presented evidence. The bloodstained knife from the apartment. The low surveillance footage showing Bobby purchasing the shovel with his sons. The cell phone data placing him at both crime scenes. The DNA evidence from the necrophilia. Bobby Ali was bound over for trial. Then came an unexpected development. On October 17, 2025, 3 weeks before his murder trial was set to begin, Bobby Ali pleaded guilty to the charge of sexual contact with human remains. No negotiation. No plea deal on the murder charge. Just an admission of guilt on one of the most disturbing aspects of his crimes. Legal experts speculated that this was a strategic move by his defense attorney, Eric O'Coin, to potentially exclude the necrophilia evidence from the murder trial, arguing it was prejudicial. But judge denied the motion. The evidence will be heard. November 6, 2025. The murder trial began in courtroom 24 of the Ventura County Superior Court. Deputy District Attorney David Russell led the prosecution. His strategy was straightforward. Present the overwhelming physical and digital evidence of premeditation. The shovel purchase, the GPS coordinates, the internet searches, the lying in wait, the cleanup, the burial. This was not a crime of passion. This was calculated murder. Defense attorney Eric O'Coin faced an almost impossible task. His client had confessed. The evidence was damning. The only path forward was to challenge the special circumstances. O'Coin argued that Bobby's motive was jealousy, not financial gain. That he had recently discovered Rachel was involved with other men after their separation. That the murder, while terrible, was driven by emotional rage, not cold calculation. He disputed the lying-in-wait allegation, suggesting Bobby's entry into the apartment was impulsive, not planned. But there was a problem with this defense. Bobby Ali took the stand. In his testimony, he portrayed Rachel as promiscuous, as someone who taunted him about affairs. He called her a drug addict and sex fiend. Rachel's aunt, Renee Redding, and her mother, Robin, sat in the courtroom and listened to Bobby assassinate their daughter's character. They would later describe it as a second murder, because there was no evidence to support Bobby's claims. None. Rachel's life was documented. Her work, her studies, her dedication to her children. The prosecution presented testimony that directly contradicted Bobby's portrayal. A straight-A student, a devoted mother, a woman who had dedicated her career to helping domestic violence survivors. The jury saw through the defense strategy. The trial lasted 2 weeks. 15 days of testimony, evidence, arguments. On November 21st, 2025, the jury began deliberations. 3 hours later, they returned with a verdict. Guilty of first-degree murder. The special circumstances were also found to be true. Lying in wait, willful and premeditated murder, personal use of a deadly weapon. Only one special circumstance was rejected: financial gain. The jury determined that while Bobby had significant debt related to child support and the divorce, the prosecution hadn't proven it was his primary motive. But it didn't matter. The other findings were enough. California law is clear. First-degree murder with special circumstances carries a mandatory sentence: life in prison without the possibility of parole. Bobby Ollie would never walk free again. Formal sentencing is scheduled for January 12, 2026, at 9 a.m. in courtroom 24. But the sentence is already determined. The judge has no discretion. Life without parole. 2 young boys, now 5 and 8 years old, have lost both parents. Their mother was murdered. Their father will spend the rest of his life in prison. Rachel's family has taken on the responsibility of raising them, ensuring they grow up knowing who their mother truly was. Not the character assassination Bobby Ollie presented in court, but the real Rachel, the dedicated mother, the accomplished student, the compassionate professional. Rachel's father, Chris Castillo, is a retired FBI agent and Marine. He knows violence. He's seen the worst of humanity in his career, but nothing prepared him for this. He assisted the investigation in an informal capacity, providing profiling insights. But he couldn't investigate his own daughter's murder. No training prepares you for that. There's a bitter irony in Rachel's story that her family can't escape. She worked at Interface Children and Family Services, directly supporting survivors of domestic violence. She helped women escape dangerous situations. She connected them to resources, to safety. But she couldn't save herself. The case raises questions that have no easy answers. Bobby Ollie had no prior criminal record. To his family, to his colleagues, to his students, he was just a math teacher, a father, someone navigating a difficult divorce. There are no restraining orders, no documented history of violence, no red flags that would have triggered intervention. He was, by all appearances, normal, until the moment he decided not to be. Rachel's mother, Robin, has spoken about the impact of court delays. 6-month continuances, postponements, a preliminary hearing pushed from February to April 2025. Each delay was another wound, another period of uncertainty, another reminder that while the justice system was moving at its own pace, her daughter was gone and her grandsons were growing up without their mother. As of late November 2025, Bobby Ollie has not filed an appeal. California law gives him 60 days from sentencing to do so, which means any appeal would come in early 2026. Legal experts suggest an appeal is unlikely to succeed given the overwhelming evidence and the confession. But for Rachel's family, the possibility means this case may not truly be over. On November 10th, 2022, Rachel Castillo went home after a day of work and graduate studies. She was 25 years old. She had her entire life ahead of her. Master's degree, career advancement, watching her sons grow up. All of it was taken in a hallway ambush that lasted less than a minute. The shovel Bobby Ollie bought that day at Lowe's, with his sons watching, was found in the desert next to Rachel's grave. It's now evidence in a storage facility somewhere, tagged and cataloged. A mundane object transformed into an instrument of horror. This has been the story of Rachel Marie Castillo, daughter, mother, sister, student, advocate, and victim. May she rest in peace. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, help is available. Contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline. This documentary was created to honor Rachel's memory and to raise awareness about the dangers that can emerge even from seemingly normal relationships. Rachel's work helping domestic violence survivors continues through the organizations she served. Interface Children and Family Services continues to support families in crisis. Thank you for watching.